The royals bask in the reflected glory of the Coronation party, but the mood darkens over the use of new laws to curb protests. The controversy over the policing of yesterday's event in central London lingers. Tonight, the leader of the anti-monarchy protesters, arrested along with 51 others yesterday, tells us he's considering suing the Metropolitan Police for unlawful arrest, insisting his group spent weeks talking to officers about a peaceful demonstration. In an interview with this programme, however, the Culture Secretary defends Scotland Yard and the new laws under which the arrests were made. Well, the new Public Order Act was designed to prevent protests causing disruption. That is exactly what the police used it for yesterday. Arrests were made hours before the coronation started. Protesters from the group Republic say they'd been open with the police beforehand, but were rounded up and kept in custody until last night. A total of 52 were arrested, and it seems that some of them had nothing to do with any protests. But the Met has defended its actions, saying it had a duty to intervene and that it acted in a proportionate manner. Serena Barker-Singh reports.
As the new king was cheered through the streets, there was another procession along the Mall.
Arrested for having T-shirts and flags.
The Met Police today accused of overreaching. 52 arrests of Republicans, climate protesters and animal rights activists. Some were 5 miles away from the king yesterday, arrested before he'd even reached the Abbey. Louisa was hosting a session with other activists on non-violent protests.
The police barged in. We just hear them shouting, "This is police, police." And there was about 20 officers who just came into the room. I was really shocked. When I was in the cell, I was thinking how absurd this is, that we have this police force who acts on false or just a ridiculous apparent intelligence, getting the wrong people at the wrong place with no evidence whatsoever. And it is just a symptom of this larger problem that they're trying to crack down on peaceful protests.
Yesterday, Mick Wright was outside a South London police station. He says he saw 2 women who had been arrested for carrying rape alarms as part of their work in a nighttime safety team.
2 women came out and they were wearing Westminster Council branded jackets, which also said Metropolitan Police on them. They're from a nighttime safety team that give out rape alarms but also help people who are in distress. They'd been searched, the rape alarms had been found.
Some people might say that it was a significant event, a historic event, that perhaps it wasn't an overreach by the Met Police. The day went relatively smoothly. What would you say to that?
The day didn't go smoothly because there were innocent people detained by the police for 14 hours, treated abysmally.
The Met responded to Mick directly on Twitter, saying the reason for the arrest was that there was a concern for military colleagues that this could scare horses involved in the procession. There's no question policing is done by consent, and the public will have to be on side.
With everything else that's been going on recently in this country, it's one of those things that we have a right to do as the British public, and to be arrested for something that's not illegal is shocking.
But everyone has the right to a peaceful protest, and yes, if they chose the weekend where the eyes of the world are watching, so be it. But then the police also need to be aware that they have created a little bit more attention because of this. So if they've handled the cases properly in the correct way, fine.
What we saw yesterday wasn't just to police what the Met call a once-in-a-lifetime event. Officers have been given new powers just this week to stop and search, the government insisting the timing is merely coincidental. Rishi Sunak attended a Downing Street party today to continue the coronation celebrations, and under his new Public Order Act, police can stop and search protesters if they merely suspect they're setting out to cause chaos.
I worry that this really sends out the wrong message to innocent people across this country who want to express their fundamental human rights to free speech and to freedom of assembly and to engage in peaceful protest.
The government say these new laws are nothing to do with the coronation, that the nature of protests have become more disruptive and intrusive. The public will now decide whether the cavalry they saw summoned yesterday by the Met was proportionate.
Well, Scotland Yard released a statement saying that it had a duty to act in a proportionate manner in line with relevant legislation. And it said it also had a duty to intervene when protests became criminal and might cause serious disruption. Well, earlier I spoke to Graham Smith, the leader of the anti-monarchist group Republic. He was arrested yesterday ahead of his planned demo in Trafalgar Square and later released on bail. I began by asking him about his concerns about the way that arrest took place and what it said about Britain.
Well, I'm concerned that they took place at all. We had plans for peaceful, lawful protest. We'd had 4 months of discussions with the police, and they had repeatedly said they had no concerns about our plans whatsoever. And then on the day, we turned up with our placards, and immediately about 40 or 50 police officers were on the street where we were and descended upon us, arrested us, searched us and our vans, and we were then detained for at least 16 hours. We've been bailed, phones confiscated, and we're still waiting to hear what's happened. And there is no evidence and no cause for any suspicion whatsoever.
But what grounds have they arrested you on?
Well,
You personally?
the statement they put out was that it was a conspiracy to breach the peace, this new legislation that was rushed into force last week. When they actually arrested us, it was on suspicion of being equipped to lock on, which is a new offence, which we were not equipped to do. So, we have very serious concerns about the conduct of the officers on the ground and whoever further up the chain of command were telling them to do this.
Are you then considering suing the police for unlawful arrest?
Well, we're going to wait and see what happens. We've been bailed. We don't know what they're going to do next, but we've certainly been taking legal advice. We've had a huge amount of support from the public and from other legal professionals. So certainly if it goes the way we think it will, we will certainly consider what action we can take next.
So possibly sue the police?
That's certainly something we're considering, and the other thing we're considering is more protests. We're certainly not going to be deterred from protesting.
Some of your fellow protesters have compared the police action to that in Russia or totalitarian regimes. Surely an insult to people there who literally can't go out and protest as we can here.
We no longer have the right to protest. Our protest is a freedom which is contingent on political decisions made by senior police officers and the government. So if they wish to stop a protest from carrying on, they have now the means to stop it without any serious evidence or concern. The law is so broad and so wide-sweeping, and their power is so undefined or ill-defined, they can simply decide to stop a protest.
When you look at what some of the environmental activists have done, throwing soup on a Van Gogh painting or powder paint on a snooker table, stopping people getting to hospital, would you accept that the actions of other protesters, other groups, have actually made life more difficult for you and brought in these laws that you've now fallen foul of?
Well, I don't think there's any justification for the new laws. I mean, the police already have sweeping powers to deal with these protesters. And also we are a free country and we should be able to protest. Yes, sometimes people go too far. Yes, sometimes people are angry by the inconvenience. But protest has to, in some way, have an impact. And if you're only allowed to do protests which has no impact, that's no protest at all.
But would you say that some environmental protesters have gone too far, stopping people from getting to hospital, for example? You wouldn't do that?
No, we wouldn't do that. We've been very clear that we do not want to do that. The importance of being free to dissent is so crucial to democracy that the line should be drawn fairly generously in favour of protest.
Graham Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.